Today, we're looking at one of the most ambitious national projects ever conceived, Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030. This is a plan so massive, its price tag is in the trillions, and its goal is nothing short of completely reinventing a country. But the big question is it a true blueprint for the future, or is it a dream that's destined to fade away in the desert? So, when this vision was first unveiled, the world was shown these just absolutely stunning, almost sci-fi renders. The centerpiece was a project called The Line, this colossal 170-kilometer-long mirrored city literally soaring higher than the Empire State Building. It was sold as a promise of a totally new, sustainable way of life right in the heart of the desert. It really did look like something pulled from a Hollywood blockbuster. But here we are, almost a decade later, and that incredible vision is running headfirst into a very hard wall of reality. The giga-projects are behind schedule, their budgets are ballooning, and they're facing challenges that, frankly, seem almost impossible to overcome. And that forces us to ask the one question we'll be exploring today. How did a dream this big start to come apart at the seams? To get to the bottom of that, we actually need to go back to April 2016. That was the moment Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, you probably know him as MBS, officially launched Vision 2030. And at its heart, the goal was simple to state, but incredibly difficult to achieve, to finally break the Saudi economy's lifelong dependency on oil. But you have to ask, why even attempt something so radical, a multi-trillion-dollar overhaul? Well, to really grasp the sheer scale of the solution they came up with, you first have to understand the size of the problem they were trying to solve. Just think about it for a second. The modern Saudi kingdom was only founded in 1932. It started out as a pretty poor nation, mostly relying on subsistence farming. But then, just 6 years later, oil was discovered. And that changed absolutely everything, turning the country into one of the wealthiest on earth. But all that wealth came with a hidden cost. This dangerous reliance on oil that, by 2016, was seen as an existential threat to the nation's future. And if you want to see that problem in a single number, here it is. Back in 2016, a staggering 82% of all Saudi exports was oil. I mean, just imagine an entire national economy balanced on the incredibly volatile price of one single commodity. Getting away from that wasn't just a good idea, it was seen as a matter of survival. So the big question was, how do you steer an entire economy in a new direction? Well, the strategy was nothing short of audacious. They essentially took a page from Dubai's playbook, used the kingdom's massive oil wealth to literally build the cities of the future. The thinking was that these incredible, awe-inspiring places would act like magnets for the world's top talent and cutting-edge industries. This was the giga-project gamble. And right at the heart of this incredibly high-stakes bet is NEOM. It was pitched as this $500 billion city of the future, and it is without a doubt the flagship project of the entire vision. And inside NEOM, there's one idea that has captured more attention and more skepticism than any other: the line. The scale of the line is it's hard to get your head around. The original plan called for a single, continuous city stretching for 170 kilometers. That's over 100 miles long, just slicing right through the empty desert landscape. And its ambition wasn't just about length. The designs showed two parallel, mirrored skyscrapers climbing 1,600 feet into the air. That's taller than some of the world's most famous buildings. It was a project so enormous, some analysts figured it would need nearly a fifth of the entire planet's annual steel production just to build it. Okay, but this is where that grand vision collides with a pretty sobering reality. With that 2030 deadline getting closer and closer, the original 170-kilometer plan for the line has been, it's been dramatically scaled back. The new target for the first phase is just 2.4 kilometers. That's an almost unbelievable 98.5% reduction in scope. And at the exact same time, the costs have just gone through the roof. That initial $500 billion price tag for NEOM, it has reportedly exploded to an estimated $8.8 trillion. Now, to put that number in perspective, that is over 25 times the entire annual budget of Saudi Arabia itself. This top-down vision isn't just ambitious, it's facing a very, very serious financial reckoning. But beyond all the construction challenges and the mind-boggling costs, there's an even more fundamental question that money alone can't really solve. If you build it, will they actually come? Who is supposed to live and work in these futuristic cities?
And this brings us to what you could call the people paradox. See, the success of this whole vision depends on attracting millions of the world's best and brightest. We're talking highly educated, socially liberal, incredibly skilled professionals. The problem is, does the kingdom, as it stands today, offer the kind of life that this global talent pool really wants?
And this is where you start to see a pretty big cultural disconnect. Now, it's true that some social laws have been relaxed, but policies like the male guardianship system are in pretty stark contrast to the values held by a lot of the global talent they're trying to recruit. For a massive part of the skilled female workforce, and let's be honest, for many men who believe in gender equality, this is a major hurdle. And you can see this playing out in the numbers. Even though Saudi Arabia has over 13 million migrants, it has really struggled to attract professionals from the Western countries it's targeting. In fact, if you combine all the migrants from the US, the UK, and Canada, they make up less than half of 1% of the entire foreign population. And this isn't just about attracting people from other countries. There are also some really deep-seated challenges with the domestic workforce. One former official pointed to a widespread problem with work ethic, particularly in the private sector. He basically concluded that the only real solution is to transform the entire society into one that's based on knowledge. So, faced with these huge challenges in attracting human talent, a different strategy seems to have emerged, a massive spending spree on things like sports and tourism. It really looks like an attempt to buy a new global culture and just engineer an entertainment economy from the top down. Just look at soccer, for instance. I mean, billions have been spent to bring in superstars like Cristiano Ronaldo and Neymar, but the return on that investment has been, let's just say, underwhelming. Average attendance for the Saudi Pro League is only a fifth of what you see in England's Premier League. And in the US, the viewership is just a tiny fraction of the audience. What the data seems to show is that a real fan culture, one that's built organically over generations, isn't something you can just go out and buy. The tourism strategy seems to run into a similar wall of cold, hard numbers. Let's say, for argument's sake, that Saudi Arabia actually hits its incredibly ambitious goal of 70 million international tourists by 2030. Well, even if every single one of those tourists spends the global average, the total money they'd bring in would amount to a pre-cost return on investment for NEOM of less than 1%.
When you look at it that way, the financial conclusion is pretty hard to avoid. The numbers just don't add up. The spending is astronomical, but the potential returns are so small that the entire tourism strategy starts to look like a financial mirage in the desert.
And all of this leads to a simple, but I think pretty powerful takeaway: more money, more problems. The vision promised these grand solutions, but by throwing just unbelievable amounts of cash at projects without a clear purpose or a viable path to profitability, the very wealth that's supposed to be funding the dream has become a huge part of the problem. And that leaves us with one final lingering thought. Look, ambition is absolutely essential for progress, but at the end of the day, it's execution that turns a vision into a reality. Vision 2030 is still one of the boldest national experiments of our lifetime, but it forces us all to ask a really critical question. Is it possible for a dream to be so grand, so disconnected from the realities of cost, culture, and human behavior that it just becomes too big to build?